So let me open us in prayer, and then we'll dive into some logistics. Waiting, Lord, just for my heart and mind to slow down a second so I could focus on you. Lord, I lift up to you the people in this room today. They take care of the littlest of among us. And Lord, that's a really important calling. So Lord, as we go through this summit today, I pray that there be a lot of useful tidbits shared, relationships formed, resources gathered, and that people would walk out of here feeling better prepared. Lord, that's what we're asking for. So we offer it up to you and say, do your best, Lord, to release us to hear well, to see well, and to remember well. In your son's name, amen. All right, so my name is John Mrazek. I lead a little company called Shared XP. It stands for Shared Executive Pastor. I started it about 3 years ago at the prompting of that young lady's pastor when he said to me, I think I need a part-time executive pastor. And I thought, that sounds really interesting. So I scurried back from Parker to Colorado Springs, met with a bunch of really smart people, and said, is this the right idea? Should I do this? And they all said to a person, if you can figure out how to make it affordable for them and that you can live on, do it. Well, those things don't always line up, but they're close enough, and God makes up the difference. So I've been doing it about 3 years. I work with several churches. As I go from place to place, I collect best practices. So finances, ministries, programming, capital campaigns, donation stuff. If you need help with recruiting and educating donation people, donors, good morning. I can help with all that. Aha. So I'll stay back by the X. Thank you. So you just don't see my... Okay. So that's what I do for a living. A little while back, I was meeting with the executive pastor down in Pikes Peak Christian Church. And he turned to me and he says, you know, it'd be great if we could get our children's ministry people together, because I've got a brand new one and she's looking to gather up information as fast as she possibly can. And that would be Wendy. Here I am talking about Wendy, and she's sitting in the front row. You can be careful. So Brian said, boy, if we could just pull that together. I started thinking about it and I said, well, I got contacts for all the churches. I'll see what I can do. And at last count, we had 31 people signed up for today. A couple of them are going to be a little bit late, and a couple of them bowed out the last minute because of kid things. So it's like, all right, that makes sense. So I'm going to start off this morning. I'm going to talk to you about who do you serve. One of the sessions I provide for churches is I'll meet with the children's ministry pastor and her team or their team, and I'll lead them through about 4 hours of strategic planning type stuff, alignment with mission, best practices, what I've seen work in other places. And because I collect it everywhere I go, every time I have a conversation with one of you, I'm collecting best practices. And I just spread those out to everybody. So no copyright or trademarking, but I probably need to ask you about that. Ooh, stand back a little bit. All right, so what I want to talk to you about is who do you serve? I'm going to start out, I'm going to get our minds going and stuff, a little bit more of a business from an executive pastor percentage. After I'm done, Mary's going to come up, and she's the local church and nonprofit insurance expert. So she's going to share with you perspectives from that world. A lot of times I work with churches, it's shocking to me how much they don't include insurance in the thought process. They plow ahead doing what they're going to do, and then the insurance company says, oh, by the way, everything you just did, we're not covering any of that. So you're on your own. It's like, what? So I tell everybody, bring your insurance person in on the front end, and she's got an enormous amount of resources. I'll be passing stuff out. There'll be a folder and then a little booklet, one for every church, and then there's some extras too. So she's going to talk about the insurance and liability, and then Dr. Debbie will come on, and she's an expert in leadership, women's leadership, stress, and her dissertation's in spirituality in the marketplace, which is really interesting when you think about the audience, the marketplace, and she's talking about spirituality. And she's made presentations to big companies doing that. So she's going to talk. And then last but not by any means least is Julie and Melissa are here from Academy Christian, and they opened up back in June. And she has a great story to tell. So let me do a couple disclaimers and we'll dive into my presentation. When I started doing this, I immediately got attacked by the evil one, who told me if you do this, somebody's going to sue you because you're offering up suggestions, recommendations, and all that kind of stuff, and that's going to sit, and people are going to run away with that, go home, somebody's going to get sick, and they're going to come and look for you and sue you. You better stop now. And I kept going, and I talked to smart people like Mary and a couple of my other friends, and they said, as long as you put disclaimers at the front end of this to say, You guys are all attending this by volunteer. I am not an expert. Mary's not an expert. Dr. Debbie's not an expert in the COVID virus. We're not. Julie is not an expert, but she's closer than I am. But she's not an expert in the COVID virus. If you guys do anything with what you learned today, that's totally on you. So I hate to be that blunt and that crass about the whole thing, but it's just, let's get that out of the way so we can move on and just say, hey, we're going to not make recommendations. We're not going to make suggestions. We're going to tell you some stories and give you some examples. Whatever you guys want to do with it from there is entirely up to you. Cool? People are trickling in. There's a couple of seats back in that corner there if you want, or up in the front here. Oh, we have a person on crutches. All right, so let's start. This is the audience participation portion of our discussion. Who do you serve? What's the easiest answer? What's the first answer? Excellent. So let me close in prayer. But you guys already figured out everything I was going to say. All right, who else do you serve besides God? Families? Get a little bit more granular. Break that up into pieces. Parents, thank you. How about children? Kids? Kiddos? Kiddos? How about volunteers? Do you know what you serve volunteers? We serve some volunteers. Who else am I missing? You guys got a supervisor, don't you? Supervisor / pastor. I'll explain why I'm going through all this in a second. You have a supervisor that you serve. There's one more missing. Everybody think of it. Think external to your building. The community. Why am I listing out all these? When I sit and meet with children's pastors, I ask them this question, and they look at me like I'm an idiot. Wait a minute, of course you know who we serve. We serve the children. I said, absolutely. First and foremost, that's your job. It's top on your job description. I have to remind them of the other ones, but right away they key in on kiddos. And that's an important part of your ministry because that's what you were hired for, and you represent a sizable portion of the church. Children's ministry / family ministry is very much a growth engine. You know what I mean by growth engine, right? If you have families in your church, you're growing your numbers, more people are attending, but you're also growing the longevity of the church. A couple of churches that I serve are in the 50s to 100 range, and a majority of those people that attend those churches are older. When I say older, mean 65 and above. And you look at that church is not growing. That church is kind of, and people say, well, it's holding its own. So either you go up or you go down, but you don't hold your own. So you look at that and you say, wow, I need a growth engine. What's the best way to get more people in this place? Care for their kids. I'm a business guy. I came from the business world. I do the XP thing. So I talk very business-like. I'm not very ministerial. So I'm talking about customers and stuff like that. Please forgive me. If we look at these groups of people, though, God, family, parents, and we have limited resources, and this is the part that always stumbles every children's pastor, is I draw this circle. And I say this circle represents your job, and I'm going to be really conservative, but I'm going to say 50 hours a week. Who here works 50 hours a week? None of you work 60, but we'll stop at 50. So we don't get depressed. 50 hours a week. You're spending easily 50 hours a week caring for, primarily we think, this group right here, the kids. In actuality, you have 50 hours to take care of this whole entire group. I said this to a young man the other day. He's just starting out in youth ministry. And he's getting married this next weekend. And I told him, you know, in the Old Testament, you had to take a year off if you got married. And he's so excited because he graduated from school June 1st. And this is his first ministry. And I do this up there, and he says, I got to work 50 hours a week? I said, you got to work 50 hours on Sunday. The rest of the week is more gravy. But for the most part, you're going to be putting in a lot of effort. And he was shocked by that. And then I said to him, okay, let's take this 50 hours, and let's divvy it up amongst this group of people to make sure that every week we're interacting with them to some extent or another. When he saw that, he was shocked. Because I was drawing a big circle. Well, I did this to him, and that was probably cruel. His brand new wife. She's going to want some of his time, and he's going to be off doing the ministry thing. You know how us guys are. Once we get the marriage job done, we hang up our suit of armor, and we go back to work. He said, no, you got to be spending time. So what I would encourage you to do with this bit of information would be, first off, acknowledge this. A lot of pastors don't acknowledge this. They don't acknowledge that they got to care for all these groups of people. And in the rush of doing the kiddo thing, and I know you can spend 50 hours a week just getting prepped for Sunday when you see the kids for an hour, that you're going to have to spend some of your time with God. If you don't replenish yourself, and I find this to be true in a lot of churches that I've dealt with long-term children's pastors, is that they're toasted. By the time I get to them, they've been serving 5, 6, 10 years, and they're toasted. And I ask them, how are your self-discipline's going? How's your self-leadership? And they say, what? All they can think about is the next Sunday. And the Sundays, they come with amazing regularity, about every 7 days. And you got to get ready to handle a bunch of kids that come flying through your doors. So you put 50 hours a week into that. You might do some stuff with parents occasionally. Maybe that's a newsletter you send home. Maybe you're meeting them at the door when they see their kids. But you need to put an investment of your time and energy into parents. This is time, this one here. There is another circle called budget. This one's a fun one. When we sit down and say, okay, your ministry has $3,000 this year. That's a really small ministry. Some of you guys are multiples of that. You have $3,000 this year. It's a finite amount. Your boss is expecting you to spend $2,999.95. He wants you to hand him a nickel at the end of the year. He wants you to use up your money. How do we use up $3,000 to address this pool of potential clients or people you serve? That's another way to look at this. So there's a couple different ways. And foolishly enough, I made this fancy worksheet and then didn't hand it out to you. So you could have been taking notes. Don't let me in front of kids. I forget all this stuff. I get busy talking. So you got all these groups of people. When you talk about each one of these, the first thing one of the pastors said to me was, I'm not good at this stuff. I'm not good at caring for people on that one-on-one level. I'm the big crowd guy. I stand up on Sundays and preach, but I'm not doing the individual kid stuff or the individual volunteer stuff. And what I would encourage them to do is, if you're able to, is identify a key volunteer who can walk alongside you, who loves to love on people. I think in Buckingham Strength Finders, it's called a woo, W-O-O, a woo. If you can find yourself a woo person who's gifted in caring for people, and give them resources and release them to care for all the groups of people. Then you can take your pie shape and say, I got the wife, I've got some volunteers, I've got my boss, and I've got my main woo. And I'm going to pour effort and time into energizing that person and renewing that person and resourcing that person so that they can care for these group of people when I can't, because I'm busy doing the ministry part. They're not at the church all week long, having meetings with pastor, having meetings with different people. These woo can go off and care for these folks. So let's stop for a second. It's 1:45, and I'm going to give some time back to Julie when she's done. What's the nugget you're going to take away from this discussion? Let me give you a couple to consider. One would be, there are 7 groups of people that you care for when you care for people in children's ministry. It's not just the kids. If you can grasp that and let it filter into your process, and then what I would do is offer that up to a holy God and say, God, you called me and gifted me and impassioned me and skilled me to be a kids pastor. Now I just found out, John told me I've got 6 more people I've got to care for. Lord, I'm going to need your help. You know what the Lord loves when you ask him for that kind of stuff. He'll just jump right in. So you got 7 different groups of people here, primarily the kids, absolutely, but some portion of your time and your budget has to go into caring for the rest of them. All right, thoughts? Anybody want to argue with me right away? That would be fun. Does it make sense? Have you ever thought of it that way?
So I have been working with churches for about 17 years, And I have been working with an insurance company, mostly called Brotherhood Mutual. And I am the director of the nonprofit and church department at Six and Geving Insurance. You might see our building on Garden of the Gods. And the specialty that we provide is we are working on nonprofits and church policies every single day. We answer lots and lots of questions from all our clients that it's amazing how you can learn something new every day, even after all the years combined with my team. So I am here today because I am going to share with you the application that your business managers are filling out and telling the insurance company what rules they're going to follow for the children's ministry, especially when it comes to the sexual misconduct coverage that they provide. Now, I've looked at some of your churches. Some of you guys are with Brotherhood Mutual already, and some of you are with the other insurance companies. But I will tell you that Brotherhood is very cutting edge, and anything I share with you today, your own personal insurance, the church insurance company would be happy to think about these rules because they're very up to date and very important to protect the children. So what I'd like you to do first of all is to take out from the folder on the left side, the Sexual Acts Liability Coverage Questionnaire.
Where's the folder?
Oh, sorry. Yes, perfect. Great, thanks. Let's see. All right, looks like most people have them. So on the left side, this Sexual Acts Liability Coverage Questionnaire. And as I said, this is what your business managers at your churches are filling out for your insurance. So the first question they ask is, does your organization operate ministries in any of the following areas? And that's the children, youth, vulnerable adults, counseling, or none of these. And typically, they mark at least one of them because most people have children's ministries and counseling. But it's interesting because the vulnerable adult definition is any person 18 years of age or older who is unable to legally consent, unable to comprehend the nature of certain actions, or susceptible to coercion or abuse. This may include individuals who are mentally or physically disabled and the elderly. And I'm starting to see more and more of ministries at churches specializing in the vulnerable adults and paying more attention to that. So I just want you to be aware of that definition. And then the next two questions, hopefully are no, but sometimes they're yes. I've had quite a few claims, and Brotherhood gets claims pretty much, I think, several times a week for sexual misconduct in the church. A lot of them are not paid out on, but it is consistently filing claims from churches. So number 2, is your organization aware of any allegation? And number 3, are you aware of any current or past employee who has ever participated in, been accused of, convicted of, pleaded guilty, or no contest to any abuse or sexual misconduct? And that's a super important thing because churches are required to do your due diligence. And so, like I said, most of the time these are no. If it's a yes answer, they're going to require a big explanation about that. And then number 4, does your organization follow a written sexual abuse prevention policy that includes screening and other procedures to help prevent sexual abuse or misconduct? So Brotherhood has this book, and John, can you pass these out too? That would be great. So this is called the Child Protection in a Ministry Environment. And the great thing about Brotherhood is that they have all these tools. They have them in printed form. They also have them electronically. They're on their website. So even if you're not a Brotherhood Mutual client, you can access a lot of their stuff because they're about helping all churches. They even have a place where you can ask legal questions even if you're not a client. So I just want to encourage you to really check out their website and see how they can be helpful. And today, there's booklets for you to take. I have about 20 booklets, but if you'd like one, I can get you one later if you don't get one. So let's see here. So what I want to show you is, as ministry people, you do not have to recreate the wheel. They have in this booklet all kinds of information about why you would set this up. To protect the children, to protect the volunteers, to protect the ministry, which ultimately protects the church. And it goes on and talks about different examples. There's reality checks about the situation. And then in the back here, they even have like sample policies and forms. And so what I want to point out is that here is sample children youth ministry volunteer application. So you want to be having your volunteers fill these out. Keep them on file. That's year 1. Year 2, worker renewal application. You want to have them fill this out again because you want to know if anything has changed in their world. And then on the background checks, you want to renew them every 3 to 5 years. And that's going to be based somewhat on this form that you're going to have them fill out every year. This is doing your due diligence. This is making sure you're running a tight operation. And these applications help uncover potentially serious situations. And like I said, these 1-year applications can give you reasons to run a new background check. So I'm going to go back to this sexual acts liability application. You'll see on here the first 4 questions can give your church a limit up to about $300,000. $300,000 had been my average of what churches typically buy for the limits for quite a while, but now I'm seeing a lot of churches wanting $500,000, wanting $1 million. So you have to answer more questions to gain a higher limit. So to get a limit of $500,000, your church business manager is agreeing to this. They're going to follow the 2-adult rule, or rule of 3, in all programs involving children, youth, or vulnerable adults. Can anybody tell me what the 2-adult rule is? Go right ahead.
2 adults for any time there's a child involved in any ministry after or anything like that. And they're 2 independent adults from each other.
Correct, correct. And rule of 3. Anybody know what the rule of 3 is? Okay, so I'm going to read you the definition because it's super important to follow the words from the insurance companies. So, as our friend here said, for the 2-adult rule, at least 2 screened adults must be present at every function or program involving children, youth, or vulnerable adults. Includes classrooms, vehicles, enclosed areas. 1 or more must be 21 years of age or older. Rule of 3. In limited circumstances, when the 2-adult rule cannot be implemented, at least 3 individuals must be present, with at least 1 being a screened adult employee or volunteer. The 2-adult rule should be followed at all times for activities or events involving children under the age of 5. Can somebody give me a reason why we would have the 2-adult rule? There's a massive reason for having the 2-adult rule. Yes. To who? Yes. Because you can even have 2 children, because you want that volunteer, that ministry worker to be protected, that if one of those children accused them of sexual misconduct, you have another child who can tell another story potentially and try to rectify the fact that this person has been accused. So that's the big thing about those rules. So you want to run criminal background checks for all employees, regardless of position. This is B on number 5. C, using a volunteer application that asks if the applicant has ever participated in, been accused or convicted of, or pleaded guilty or no contest to any abuse or sexual misconduct. So one of the things about having an application, just the sheer fact you have this is a deterrent to people who have any history of harming children. They will not want to fill this out. So this is just a great frontline place to start, where if somebody balks at filling this out, there could be a potential issue. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because you want the best people in there. And then making an inquiry into an employment applicant's criminal history during the hiring process as allowed by statute. That would be based upon interviews, based upon background checks. Are policies and procedures in place to prevent unobservable one-on-one counseling? Okay, this has become a very big deal. This is like kind of the latest, greatest information about protection in churches, is they want windows and doors. They really don't want one-on-one counseling in a closed off room. They want to make sure that you have safety even with adults. The rest of this has to do with the background checks. And these, if you were to answer that you conduct background checks on all volunteers, all employees, and you can turn in your sexual abuse prevention policy for underwriting approval, you can get, if they approve all that, you can get at least $1 million in a limit, and then you potentially can even get up to $2 million, because they can add another $1 million into your excess limit, potentially. But they're pretty strict about all that, because they want to see that you're doing your due diligence. This brochure is also in there. This talks about background screening. The big thing I noticed is it talks about picking a good company. And typically the insurance companies have created relationships with background screening people, or companies I should say. So, and a lot of times they give discounts. So if you find out who your insurance carrier is, and then you should be able to find out who they have a relationship with, and then you can use them to run your background checks. And then the other big thing about volunteers and finding the best ones is doing a reference check. And this is not just collecting the information, this is actually calling to find out what has happened in the past and how people recommend them. And there's actually in here a tool for reference checks where you can keep track and where you can have them fill it out. So moving back to this, so they also have sample poster language that you can use to notify your volunteers of what the process is. And then one of the great things that Brotherhood has done over the years, and I just want to make sure you all know about these things, is Brotherhood has actually have an entire checklist book. And it's electronic now, so you can even ask your agents to send it over. But they have all these pages where you can assign somebody to go through and figure out where your church is at with things. So for instance, on this one, this is the background screening checklist. 1, do you currently have a written child abuse prevention policy? Yes or no? And then so that your volunteers, your ministry pastors actually know where to put their time and energy, because they'll figure out what they're missing. And I can't stress enough how many tools Brotherhood has that can help you guys do an efficient, thorough job, and you don't have to recreate the wheel. All right. So questions on anything about insurance or about volunteers or anything that I can answer for you? Yes. Okay. Yes, this is all pre-COVID for sure. So yeah, we're gonna address the whole COVID issue later on. So we'll get to that. But you're correct. This whole booklet pre-COVID. But I will tell you, fabulous information is on Brotherhood Mutual's website. You bring that up and it says COVID. And Brotherhood, of any of my companies I've worked with, which I probably work with about at least 10 daily, that they have updated their website every day. They have sent out many, many articles. I've been sending articles to my clients every week for months now. They really have put out the latest, greatest information on COVID, but I will direct you to their website because that is changing, and they are polling churches, and they are trying to get y'all the best and latest and greatest information that is coming out. So I would assign somebody to be checking their website on what they're putting out there. They have videos for COVID. They have all kinds of articles. And that is, from my perspective, the best place for the churches to go is to brotherhoodmutual.com and then click on the COVID information tab. I think it is a tab.
Thank you for that. These numbers are these based on state requirements and these are recommendations?
Okay, so one thing about Brotherhood that gets a little bit maybe complicated, let's say, is that they're putting out material for the whole nation, okay? And so you are correct that there could be specific state rules for all the states, but especially here in Colorado. And if you're a daycare, there's even, DHS rules on that. So the best thing to do with some of these tools, even these applications, is to have an attorney review them, but at least you don't have to pay that attorney to create them, which is actually pretty expensive. But to have them review them and to make sure they're state specific, then you can feel free to go ahead and use them thoroughly. But it is always good to have all their tools checked by an attorney, especially like waivers, because I have all the samples, but like he's pointing out, it is very state specific on a lot of these rules at times. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I encourage y'all to interact with your business managers. Find out what insurance companies you're with. Find out, even requesting a copy of the sexual misconduct application just to see what they've signed you all up for could be really helpful. And then, but feel free to use Brotherhood's tools because like I'm telling you, they're just out there for the church and they want to help the church, all churches, whether you're clients or not. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, so one of the things I like the most about dealing with Mary is as the executive pastor of the church, I would understand at a high level what needed to be done. But when you drill down into individual ministries, a lot of times I would fill out an application like this. I'd fill it out every year for them. and send it in, and the rest of the church didn't know what was happening. So that's why when Mary and I were talking about what to talk about would be, talk about this, because I don't know that everybody knows all the things they've been signed up for and are responsible for according to those sheets. So as the best you can. Now she represents, if you guys have Church Mutual, Guide One, there's a bunch of little different organizations. Out of all the ones that I've interacted with, and she's given me lots of notebooks full of all this information, Brotherhood Mutual has the most current and the most comprehensive compared to some of the other ones. So you might want to ask your business administrator which one you guys are with, so you could see if the stuff offered by Brotherhood Mutual might be a little bit better. All right. One of the things you see popping up occasionally on the screen is the goals for today's session. One of the things I'd hope that you'd all do is make some friends. There's a thing in Colorado Springs called the XP Merge, Executive Pastor Merge. We get together every 6 weeks. Jerry's one of the people that attend this with me, and it just can be anywhere from 5 to 15 executive pastors all in the room at the same time. And we all get together and we share best practices, encouragement. We talk about our bosses, because the XP and senior pastor role is so unique that sometimes you need somebody else to help you process what's going on in that area. So I wanted to kind of start something like that here with you all by just linking you all together and letting you share contact information. So when you're starting to think about, hey, I'm going to roll out the orange curriculum, and you look at that and you say, wow, this thing's massive. Do I really want to do this? You could probably find people in the room who are using an orange. Or you might be able to, if you need to, you can email me and say, hey, do you know anybody using orange that I could talk to? And I could email you back and say, yeah, call this guy at this church and they'll help you. So that's one of the things I help with executive pastor type stuff. On your tables, I put a coupon for a service. I was mentioned earlier, it's this is a special just for today's summit. I usually do these for churches. It has to do with strategic planning type stuff. A lot of you have a strategic plan, just sometimes you struggle with getting it implemented, and that's the part that I'm an expert at doing, is getting things implemented. So the first thing, create real-time job descriptions. I have a really neat process. Some people call it the Post-it note exercise, but I'll get a whole group of children's ministry people together, and I'll ask them to write down every single thing they do. Then we put it up on the wall in columns according to job descriptions, and then based on that, we start some discussion about why this job shows up on 3 different people's plates and why this person has a job I thought was assigned to me. It really brings into it a real-time job description versus a lot of times job descriptions are written in a vacuum. It's like, I want you to do these things. Whether you do those things, I don't care, are able to. It's mostly because the world says, hey, you got to do this, this, and this. And it's like, well, that's not on my job description. So this is a real-time example of what people are actually doing in the ministry, and then we divvy them up. And I always love to leave a column off to the right that says volunteer or to be determined. So what you're doing then is you're writing the job description of the position you want to hire going forward. So you can take that to your business administrator and say, here's the person I want to hire. I already have the job description. Org chart from children's ministry, current and future. That one's kind of handy. It's a little roadmap. It's very visual, and people really like that because they can see how the ministry is structured. And when you're trying to woo volunteers, one of the discussion points we were going to have in our lightning round, if we had time today, was how to recruit volunteers. One of the things is to create a volunteer-friendly environment, not a volunteer-hostile environment. If you can show them all this documentation. Alignment between the CM mission and overall church mission. A lot of times, you either inherited one or you created your own, and you really didn't think to include the church's overall, and then you sit down with your boss and you say, okay, here's where we're going this year, and he says, yeah, but we're going this way. And that all breaks down. So aligning those 2 missions so that the overall church mission has been adjusted to a children's environment. And then if time allows, in that time together, 4 hours, and you can usually spend a couple hours alone on the job description, but with the 1, 3, and 5-year roadmaps. People really like that because it's a list of bullet points, and you say, here's the things we're going to do this year, over the next 3 years, and 5 years from now, and we plan into that so that we can identify the steps. So I just offer that up to you for consideration.
So, do you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose yet? I think you saw Dr. John's email the other day that he was going to just feed you full of information, and that's what's happened so far. I've heard John talk about acknowledging who you serve. So with that, you've already reserved 50 hours a week figuring out who you're going to serve and how you're going to do it. And if you're like me, probably 50 hours really isn't the truth. When we're doing something that we're passionate about and serving people, it seems to me like I spend 60 to 80 hours a week doing what I do now. And then with Mary's talk, talking about the different populations that we need to consider regarding sexual misconduct, vulnerable adults, and protecting children as well as volunteers. So there's a lot that's coming at you right now. And as if that's not enough in your regular day-to-day business, you already have added pressure with the kickoff that's going to happen in August with your student ministry. And now with COVID, the added pressure of just what are we supposed to do with COVID? Do we open early? Do we wait? And then with all of this information, if you're like me, it could really diminish your energy and make you feel overwhelmed and worried and anxious. So let me introduce myself to you. I'm Dr. Debra Dean. As Dr. John has alluded to, my passion is helping others integrate their faith at work. And I truly try to help people nourish their soul and the souls of others through their work. I've spent years doing research, teaching, and publishing on this topic, and it's just one that I'm super passionate about, because we hear a lot about the strategies and the logistics of business. So you have tons of folks that know how to put together schedules and timelines and budgets, but we often neglect or forget the people part of business or ministry. And so that's where I come in, is to help us remember to feed each other and nourish the souls in the workplace and in your ministry. So imagine with me for a moment that it's early in the morning, you're outside with your favorite morning beverage soaking in the sunrise, listening to the birds chirping and feeling the newness of the day wash across your face, and feeling connected to God in a way that makes you feel like it's just you and Him. For me, this feeling of oneness with God is nourishment for my soul. And I can tell you right now, I'm in Kentucky and I'm so missing the mountains. So we have a special place right there in Colorado Springs. It energizes me. It truly helps me focus my day, but it's brief. You know, it's brief when we stand there and we look at the mountains and we just realize God's beauty and God's majesty in His creation. It's brief, because then the busyness of the day happens. So when we integrate our faith at work, we call this workplace spirituality, which by definition is a recognition of an inner life that's nourished by meaningful work that takes place in the context of community. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But basically, research shows that we're no longer content with going to work and parking our souls at the door. People want to come to work and have our whole self, our body, heart, mind, and our soul. And the Gallup organization, the one that you probably are familiar with because they do StrengthsFinder, they went back and reviewed research of 25 years, over 80,000 participants, and what they found was that pay and benefits are like tickets to a ballpark. They can get you in, but they can't help you win. And you probably see that with your ministry, especially if you're working with volunteers, because you're not offering pay and benefits. So there's truly something special when you can offer something else that's going to feed their soul or nourish these people that are coming to help you. All right, so let's first clarify the problem. And I like how Dr. John made a list up there of who you're serving. So now we can take a look at that list and look at who are we serving and what sort of pressure are we receiving from this. We probably have pressure from our work if you're working a full-time job in addition to doing ministry, or maybe your ministry is your full-time job. You may have pressure from family and school. You know, what are you going to do with school? Are you going to send the kids back? Are you going to homeschool? And then the election and the virus and the forest fires, there's just all of this anxiety and fear and stress and pressure in a normal daily life. And then add to that the pressure of ministry with the children, volunteers, parents, and staff. So I understand that right now this is a critical time for you as you're trying to figure out what we're supposed to do next. From my research, I've had a few complaints, or I've heard a few complaints. The first is, how can we prepare our ministry so people won't be afraid to show up? And we're going to talk about that in a bit, especially when Julie comes up. But how can we reduce their fear and anxiety? And to remember that we need to think about that list that John has on the board. How can we reduce the fear and anxiety for each one of those people? The children, the families, our community, everybody. The second argument is that the church is not opening fast enough. And I think Julie's going to talk some about that, as well as the third debate, the church is opening too soon. So how do we do this? And then I want to hear from you with this, what your fears, anxiety, your stress is. Please take a moment, take a deep breath, because we have been giving you all sorts of information, and think about what's causing you stress and anxiety. What's causing you worry or fear or pressure in relation to your ministry? On the slide here, I have Slido.com. So if you want to pull out your phone and go to Slido.com and enter the keyword soul, you can text me right now and let me know, what are you thinking? What are you anxious about, worried about, fearful about? And this is, you'll notice that all comments are anonymous in this. So it'll give you a chance to speak up, even if you're a little bit fearful about speaking up. Or you can save your comments for later, because we will have the Q&A session at the end. Again, that's Slido.com, and use the keyword soul. Okay, now in your handout, the Nourishing Your Soul handout, we're going to walk through this. And what I'd like for you to do is just take a deep breath again and kind of forget about all that worry and stress and anxiety and everything that we've told you for a moment, because I want to focus on you. All right, so this image shows soil or dirt, and I equate this to our soul. If a soil of a plant is dry and nutrient deficient, nothing can grow in it. And I like to talk about the parable of the sower here. So in Matthew 13, it says, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 160 or 30 times what was sown. So I want to talk about having good soil. And let's talk about replenishing your inner self, your soul, your spirituality, or being. If I were to send a soil sample off today of you and see what the analysis would be, would you have a nutrient-rich soil, or would it be depleted of nutrients? So think about what feeds you spiritually. Think back to this morning sunrise with God. Would that feed your soul? What else would feed your soul? Maybe just taking a deep breath in the middle of the day, or walking outside and taking a hike. For me, I love going to worship concerts or exercising. Even journaling helps me nourish my soul. Worship music or walking or praying, those types of things. So think about that. It's specific for you, but what helps you nourish your soul? And then how often are you nourishing your soul too? Think about that. Now with this picture, we're looking at our root-bound plants. And if you planted anything earlier this year, you pulled it out of the package, it probably looked like this. So assuming we have healthy soil to put this in, let's just take a look at our roots of our plants. If they're all bound up and restricted, the pot was too small. Just like if we're all bound up and and restricted with where we are at, we can't flourish. So we need to make sure that we have a healthy soil and a healthy root system. Imagine that these roots are our purpose. And just as roots want a big enough pot to grow in, we need the right setting so we can have a bigger impact. If we have this spaghetti maze of roots, we can't focus. So we need that determination and dedication for our roots to really have clear purpose. The intentional purpose helps us find meaning in what we do. And with all of my research, I found that meaningful work is one of the top three, and I'll share with you the other two in a minute, but one of the top three predictor variables for engaged employees or volunteers, committed employees or volunteers, and satisfied employees and volunteers is having meaningful work. All right. So with this picture, this is the stem of our plant. And you'll see that on your worksheet. We have a beautiful flower there, and this is your stem. So when our stem is nice and straight and healthy, it's like channeling our energy from our root system up into the flower part of the plant. And this is where we get the passion and the energy. The stem part, it gives that clear direction, but in order to have this really nice stem that's healthy with clear channeled energy for our passion, we still need to have that healthy soil and healthy roots. Now the leaves of your plant represent your gift. And the way leaves convert sunlight into energy, your gift converts passion and purpose into your daily life. Through your gifts, you bring purpose and passion to the world. So think about that too. Your gifts are your skills, talents, personal traits, your wisdom, your abilities. I wonder though, do you truly know what your gifts are? Or if you're like me, I used to just do anything anybody would ask me to do. I didn't know that I had a special gift. So think about that, kind of ponder on that. And I'd love to help you identify your spiritual gift. I actually have an assessment that can help with that. So I relate the proper use of our gifts to working smarter, not harder. And Ecclesiastes 10:10 says, if the axe is dull and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength. But wisdom brings success. So just like this, if we're using our gifts, or if we're using this sharpened axe, we're working smarter and not harder. When your purpose is clear and your passion grows, you'll be able to use your gifts as an offering to the world. Okay, so the middle of the flower is called a pistil. And in the pistil, it has the stigma, style, and ovary. So this is kind of a complex part of the flower, but it's needed for the reproduction of the flower, just like with us, with our service. And I consider the pistil service. So we want to make sure that we align our gifts and purpose and passion for the service. At this stage, just as the pistil is complex and has many parts and many responsibilities, though, it's important that we set boundaries. And because we want to make sure we're aligning our spiritual gifts for the right purpose, and that we're not just trying to be all things to all people. So this part, this is really where we take action, and it's so, so important that for us to work smarter and not harder, we have to carve out those boundaries and know, just like John was talking about earlier with the different job responsibilities. If you have someone in your ministry that's really good in a certain area, let them shine with that. That's their gift. And then they can delegate the other tasks that they need to someone else who has gifts for those responsibilities. All right, so the flower petal, this represents greatness. And when our gifts are flourishing and they're spreading God's love to others, we smile because we see greatness in ourselves and others. It's so fabulous when I see people that are truly using their gift. My son used to have a kindergarten teacher, and she was just amazing, and I knew it. And I've seen workers like this in our churches that you just know they are gifted with children's ministry and they are truly using their God-given gift. And it just makes you smile, right? So when I see beautiful flowers, I also smile. It reminds me of God's beautiful creation, his perfect creation, his perfect plan. And this flower, this petal represents the greatness of having healthy spiritual soil, healthy roots, a streamlined stem for channeling our passion and energy to do the work. So let the beauty of who you are be what you do. And remember to enforce those boundaries, because we can't be all things to all people. If we're doing too much, it will quickly deplete the nourishment of our soil. So working spiritually is about fulfilling your life purpose or larger mission with passion, using your gifts in service to others. In doing so, others pick up on your beauty and the gifts and smile. But my warning to you is this, to be careful. If anyone's ever tried to grow a plant, you know it can wither very quickly. It can die very quickly if it's not getting the routine care and attention it needs. And we're the same. If we're not tending to each one of these parts, our soil, our roots, our stem, every part of our soul, then we can wither too. And then we're not serving others with the best of our ability. So to take stock of that is super important, and maybe even do that in a daily journal or a weekly journal or a weekly touch base with friends. So with this beautiful flower, we need to nourish our soil, tend to our roots to keep the weeds out and give the roots enough room to flourish. We need to channel our energy and purpose through our straight stem for clear direction on what we're doing. And we need to identify our spiritual gifts and use them to honor and glorify God, delegating the rest to others who have those spiritual gifts to fulfill the needs. And we need to set boundaries with our service to make sure we focus our gifts to serve others and avoid toxic or abusive situations that quickly deplete the nourishment of our soil. So I'm glad we're all here together, and I like how Dr. John talked about the XP merge, where he brings people together on a routine basis, and I hope we can continue to do this where we meet more frequently, either together as a group as we are or in small groups, just to make sure that we're using our gifts the way God intended, and make sure that we have that sense of community. So I said I had three variables, predictive variables that help with a happy workplace. And those are a sense of community, as we have now, meaningful work, and agapeo love. So those three areas, in all my research, those three areas are the ones that can significantly predict the happy workplace, engaged employees, job satisfaction, and organizational commitment. I want to encourage you to connect with each other and support one another. If you do see someone's soil depleting, let them know it's time to take a break and join God for another sunrise with their favorite beverage. And to help you with this endeavor, I'm offering a checkup. So Dr. John has another handout that he'll give you. But if you can contact me, I'd like to connect with you before the end of August, because I think that'll be, your peak time. But let's connect. I want to help you find out what your spiritual gifts are and learn about how God created you for greatness. I also want to pray with you and find out how I can support you this season. So this content in my presentation was inspired by Linda Ferguson. This is her book. Early in my scholarly research for my dissertation, I read about Linda and just fell in love with the simplicity. And this is her drawing here, basically what we just walked through. But it's a great image to remember that we must tend to our soil and our purpose and our passion and greatness and service. So I actually used to have this cut out on my desk at work. And in conclusion, I want to encourage you with this. You're not alone. As the 2-decade trend to spend more time at work increases, we actively seek opportunities for meaning, purpose, and a sense of community and belonging from our work. So you're not alone. We have people all around the globe that have been starving for this for years. This trend has been identified as a spiritual awakening in the American workplace and is becoming known as today's greatest mega trend. That we aren't there just for a paycheck or just for a pat on the back. There is more to life, and we want to nourish our soul and have that meaningful work and connection. All right, so along with our presentation here, again, Dr. John and Mary, I believe, are passing out my handout. This is a complimentary service to you. Please take advantage of that. There are no strings attached. I truly just want to see how I can serve you and help you. I know this year is much more difficult and complex than previous years, so I want to be of service to you.
The XP up at Academy Christian Church, and he said, hey, if you need any help with a new person or somebody with new ideas and stuff like that, talk to Julie. So he was taking her 50 hours and turning it into 60 hours real easily.
Melissa.
But her and I went out and grabbed lunch last week and talked about what she was going to talk about. So one of the things I cautioned her about getting involved in would be denominational specific things or leadership specific things. What she might share might not work in your context, or it might work. You don't want to, let's not get into a debate over whether elders should be allowed to say that or a pastor should be allowed to say this or whatever. Let's not do that. Let's just stay at a very high level. She's going to share her experiences, by no means a recommendation or a suggestion, just her experiences. And she's got her email address, so you can reach out to her. Her associate, Melissa, just came on board recently, so we're not going to make her stand up here, but we might drag her in eventually. So I give you Ms. Julie.
All right, thank you. All right, so a little nervous being here because this is a subject that really there's no blueprint for, right? And so, but I did want to really come here to share the story. John asked me mainly 3 questions to share, so I'm going to go over that first. What started the ball rolling on restarting children's ministry? Some of the research that we did before making the decision to start with age potty trained 3-year-olds and above is how we started. And then I've got some documents to kind of show you. If I just really pray that today, anything that mistakes we've learned, that you won't make, and that just you come away with some nuggets, maybe some encouragement today. For when we eventually do all have to start up, and then also maybe something that we did right, something that we didn't do right that I wish hadn't done. So anyway, so I'm going to start. Melissa is fresh out of college, graduating, like her graduation from Ozark Christian is the end of the summer, and so I was sending her all this stuff near the end of her senior year, and then she came on the week before we opened. Boom. It's a fast and hard job, she jumped in and she has been amazing. I'm so grateful for her. So thank you, Melissa. I'm so glad you're here. Just to give you a little overview too, because I see some people I know in this room and some I just met today. That was really wonderful. Pre-COVID at Academy Christian Church, we are running upwards of 220 plus children, servicing close to 300. We call it, because that's how many volunteers we need, when 80 of those children stay 2 services, because we had a very large children's choir, which I do not plan to start back up, by the way. It's kind of a heartbreaking thing, but just from research and things. But anyway, so our first Sunday, June 7th, we had 40, okay? And then when we did open 2 and under, so then the home ministry was open, we are landing around 65. My goal was no more than 80 the first week because of the research, staying under 50%, the size of our classrooms, all that stuff. When you're hearing me, think about your buildings. All that stuff is so important. We were seriously science nerds, spending hours together, especially my preschool director and I, because she loved that kind of thing, and I did too. And so it was like we were trying to just figure out ways that we could minister to these families and these children in as safe a way as we could do in our building, in our setting. So your setting is going to be very different, but just, it's kind of fun. Maybe hopefully you'll come away with something today that will say, oh yeah, but we could do that in our building because we have these huge rooms or something like that. So, so what started the ball rolling? I'm going to be like totally honest today. You're going to hear my heart because we're all in the same boat. You know what really hurt my heart was the pastoral care. That started the ball rolling. And when President Trump, at one point, I remember watching on TV saying that the churches were essential. We had already seen that for about 2 months, right? All of you that are getting the phone calls from the desperate moms, the depression, the anxiety. Our whole staff was quarantined for 2 weeks. We couldn't minister in person to our people because somebody had been exposed. The first 2 weeks of this whole journey. In that time, I had walked alongside a family where a 4-month-old baby died. A grandfather died of COVID. The 4-month-old baby passed away from something different in the beginning. And these stories, these desperations, some of our single widows that serve in children's ministry, doing resource things and cutting out crafts, their hearts, their isolation. So this whole thing was, wow, this is really a sad time. This is what we say here, our community is suffering, okay? Our church family is suffering. And so that has really started getting the ball rolling of the biggest thing that stood out. We had one of those worship nights, everybody had a worship night outside, right? Okay, like with your cars all pulling up, and I went from car to car, and the main theme in those cars was the isolation that their children were feeling. I'm not kidding, I tried to stay with my mask 6 feet away, 2 to 3 minutes at each car, 350, I mean, people were, they kind of took note of all spread out. I walked all around, you know, and within 2 minutes, moms were telling me how depressed they were. They haven't suffered from depression before. Their anxiety, I can't do this school thing. It was from car to car. And so this whole thing is churning inside me getting on my knees, read through Psalm 91, okay? Getting on my knees, saying, God, how can these people need you? And how can I point them to Jesus in a better way and the best way we can at the time? And so then we look around our building, and we're actually going to be having a building program going through for a new children's wing. So our classrooms are not huge, which is why I made some decisions the way I did. But that is what really got the ball rolling there. But we couldn't open without volunteers. So that was another thing. We ran a volunteer survey. I would highly recommend this. You probably have already done this, a lot of you, but we ran a volunteer. This is what my crazy stuff looked like, okay? You know, my spreadsheets. Out of 253 active cleared volunteers in our ministry, 80 did the survey and said that they could serve. Okay, now since then, I will tell you, that was beginning of May. Since then, we're down to about 65. And I got a few more yesterday, so we'll probably land around between 70 and 80 now that are active. Remember, we're 65 children. So it's a whole rebuilding, right? All of us are gonna be rebuilding, kind of changing what we're doing. That, I was thrilled with 80. That was the beginning of May. I mean, schools weren't even in session. I was thrilled thinking, okay, there's a little form that Melissa passed out, the half sheet. I spent hours on that. So if that helps anybody, I'm thrilled. I will caution, one word that is really important is to say the word able. Now, the part about the mask, I said, are you willing to wear a mask? That was different. But the first two questions, I found the word able not to be offensive to people that were immunosuppressed or something that they feel like they couldn't come back. Because they were willing to come back, they weren't able. So able is a huge word. I've corrected myself a million times. My preschool, my nursery director is doing things from home, not attending on Sundays. She is not able right now. So a lot of our volunteers are having a great rapport with her. She's calling them, talking to them, and trying to keep them connected and out of isolation so much because she has the same thing. So if that's one thing I can say of you, the word able is so important with that. It's not offensive. And so I just kind of went through this. These are my the volunteers that said they are able, then we went through and we built a schedule. We did registration. So let's move on to this document here. The one here where it says the information. And I tried to make it cute. I tried to keep it on one page. Go ahead. Oh, we need more copies. Right here. Okay.
Is this extra one?
Yes.
There you go.
It's the half sheet too.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna hold off with that a minute. I'm sorry, I went ahead of myself. This is the explanation for the research, some of the research that we did to make decisions to start with what age kids we did. So part of it was from some of the studies, a common sense told me I didn't want my volunteers touching bodily fluids, okay? So you have, in most churches, what do our oldest women like to do? Rock babies. I wanted to protect my oldest and my youngest. It was youngest children and the oldest. There was a lot of unknowns in April and May. There's some more knowns right now, but there was a lot of unknowns then. A part of it, a big part also had to do with our building. And so if I didn't open the 2s and unders, guess what? I could spread out my whole preschool. We had 4, 6, or 8 children in rooms. That was it. So my idea was if a family walked in and they walked in through, and I'll tell you about check-in later because we learned some things there too. So their child was actually around, maybe flying by somebody at check-in behind a counter, okay? And then they walked in there with their teacher, 2 teachers, 2 teachers, and then 5 kids, 4 kids, 8 kids, whatever it was. And so we did registration so that I knew we wouldn't be over 80 children, which I considered 80 to 100 to be my 50%. Okay, so, but because my rooms are smaller, I lowered it to 80. So this is all of the studying stuff, and so that's how I came to some of those decisions. But I loved it that, wow, we actually cleaned everything. I mean, for 3 days, moved a whole bunch of stuff put a small amount of toys. We had a clean bin, a dirty bin, this whole thing we've done. And we're able to spread out. Melissa, could you please bring me my table, my bag? Thank you. We were able to spread out. And so that's the reasons we decided just to stay with potty trained age 2 and over. They help themselves with the toilet, things like that. And so, anyway, so let's move on to this right now. So one of the ways I went on, we have a YouTube channel, and I went on, like all of you, we had to not have Vacation Bible School this week. I mean, this summer, because that was 500 plus people on campus every day, and 1,000 at the family fun night type thing. And so I did go on and do a video myself talking to them about why there was a decision to obviously cancel VBS. And that helped the physical. I got very few emails back, that thing. But I also went on, when I got the 80 volunteers, and did a video training, put it on a YouTube channel. Sent it out in an email with some things, with these, and tried to communicate, over-communicate, and things, answer questions, things like that. And so this information thing was a little bit overwhelming for some parents, but we really felt like through some of the research we did that we needed to go with this. There's a wellness check poster by the areas where the check-ins are. We ask those questions first. We have check-in hosts. Nobody touches a check-in. Nobody touches a mouse. The check-in host, there's a dot there, which I'll show you these dots in a minute. Dot there, they stand there, they answer the questions. The check-in host checks them in. They get walked straight to the restroom, elementary and above. They go in there and wash their hands. We have a new position. You know what it's called? Soap pumper. I'm not kidding. So the soap pumper stands between the restrooms, and they pump and they smile. And we got these cute T-shirts they wear that say "Yay, you're here," and they pump. And our volunteers fight over that position. And they pump and they greet and they do not hug, and they say, "Oh, don't forget to come over here," because parents will have the habit of walking straight to class. Our preschoolers, I am not kidding, they are adorable. They go straight into their classroom, up these new, really, really safe, you know how there's all kinds of step stool things? No, get a really safe one. get an adult one. We put it up, go straight up there, all two, like now our 2-year-olds even, but 3s and above, they're all washing their hands, and then they go stand on their dot, and they're ready for circle time. And my preschool director had to change everything. They all have their own trays that they work off of. Okay, their trays is a space, they have dots on them, and they are amazing because we only have, 8 to 12. So if you have a lot larger church, I'm probably not real helpful with that. So, but anyway, so the check-in area, Melissa, would you say that's gone really well? Really well. And Melissa or myself we've had visitors every week. Okay, takes a new family around. And we just try to be as happy and as positive as we can because we're doing all this kind of things, asking all these questions on the wellness thing, and doing all these things that they're not used to. And some of them are rolling their eyes, and we just keep smiling and being positive and keep going. So, the class, you can see the part about the class capacity and cleanliness. During the classroom, between services, we use a certain spray that is not the bleach solution because of breathing issues with children, with us, with myself, anyway, so we use a different one that is in a container that we use, but then the easiest, and this is the easiest to tell you, is the bleach solution that they use in child development centers is 16 ounces of water to 1/8 a teaspoon of bleach. That's it, in a spray bottle. And then the 1/8 a teaspoon of bleach could also be 5 droppers of bleach from a dropper. And so we fill those. And that's for later, for cleaning later and things, but that's helpful. The other thing that was so helpful for me when we decided to open our 2 and under, which we did in July 12th, okay, was I called area child development centers that had stayed open, that were for essential workers through the whole time and just never closed. That was so helpful. I mean, you can read all the articles you want. You can watch the TV and you can think, are these people really in there working with children? Do they really know the age appropriateness of what a 2-year-old's going to do when you tell them to stay on a dot? Okay, I mean, right? And so that was so helpful. And they're going like, Julie, we really tried for the first 4 days to keep these masks on these kids. What they did is they moved them around, they touched them, they went under them, they did this. They touched their faces more because they were wearing a mask, okay? Plus, in child development centers, it's 8 to 12 hours these children are there. And so it's a lot different. We have an hour and 20-minute type thing, okay? So anyways, and then the class locations probably that's just for our parents to see. So the parents all receive this document of the basic information. And then you can see on the back of your paper where, once again, tried to keep it on one page, try to make it look happy. It does. Well, I made sure I did it in color for you guys. And so I don't know, it's kind of like, okay, June, we're having registration. That really helped me to know I was well under. So I knew I was supposed to have a 41. Okay, and I think 42 showed up the first day. But that was well under our 50%, trying to once again follow the CDC guidelines as best as we could. And then they also knew, because the 2 service thing is a huge thing of our church, we do use a true curriculum. And so we do like both the large group time and the classroom time. So we have something different because our ABFs, which is our adult Bible fellowships, are so popular. So we have lots of parents staying 2 services. And then that's also, we have choir, which there were 70 in choir, in elementary choir, like K through 5th grade. And so that caused a lot of people, I want to stay. But if they were in choir, I really encourage them they need to go to church first. Okay, so that's where that just coming to one service, that was a little bit of a deterrent for some families. Really, we have to do that. And so that's okay. Then we took away the registration except for my special needs class. Okay, so they let me know. I have a list of each week who's coming, so I know how many volunteers I need. That's a little unique situation. And so then in the middle part is the July. And so we're already at a point. So when we opened the whole children's ministry with the 2 and under, knowing we cannot social distance in there, knowing I was trying to follow some things with the child, the CDC, the childcare in our area, some of their practices. Then we did double in numbers, and then we're close to we're around 70, right now, and that's still well under our 50%. And that's still there is no room that has more than 10 in it. So I've been able to keep, panicked one week because we got 13 during 11 o'clock service, and we quick shifted around, moved, and took care of that. But it's really been, it's between about 4 and 10 in each class. And that's been, once again, look at your building, because we have to look at our building, move things around, close one classroom, open the bigger ones. So for those of you that have had that, for the families with 2 and under, we did have in the month of June a big room. Like some of you have like a big room that families can come in right now when your churches are open. So that was maybe used 1 week. That wasn't a big hit. And so when we opened children, I mean, because really coming to church with your 2-year-old, I know, but I just wanted something for the families, because maybe even I thought now that they would still want to do that and be with their family. And we have very few going into the main worship service, because once again, around a lot of people. So most of the kids that come are coming into the children's ministry. And so, and then August is kind of the same. I have shifted this thing 10 times. That's why July and August look the same, because they didn't used to. And then I just decided this isn't working. I'm going to move some things around. And now that we're settling at a certain number, I kind of feel like we're okay for now. This is the hard part, all of you. I mean, this kept me up at night. I spent hours and hours on this. The communication we do is so important. They need to see us. They need to see our hearts. The video communication is so important. Even like starting it out with the email. Hey, I have something to tell you guys today. Thinking about you. I care about you. And this is what I'm thinking. I'd love some feedback. So some of our lead, you have those heroes in your ministry, right? They gave me feedback. That was really awesome. So, anyways, so those are the main 2 documents that every Monday we send called a Monday message from Children's Ministry. Those were attached every Monday, and we'd hear a little bit more from people, a little bit more. In June, the children did wear masks, 3 and above. They kept their masks on. They were drooped. Some of them were, and there was so much unknown, and so we did have that. But in July, I believe we doubled because we didn't have age 10 and under wear masks. The leaders have always worn masks. The staff always wear masks. And so I have not gotten one complaint from a leader. I will say one piece of a takeaway today. My resource director came. She called me late last night and got a hold of me early this morning. And Melissa and I were talking about this, because I would say we just said they're required. That was it. Okay. We decided at our church that they were required for leaders. I was trying to protect them and the children. Okay. But if you start giving excuses why, or some scientific study why, or this or that, you're going to get more arguments and more of their political sides. Just say they're required. So I just told Donna today, just tell your resource team, they're almost all older, 65 plus coming in. 24 of them come in and prep all our crafts for our bins, They love being together. It's like a sewing circle, and precious women. They're arguing about the mask so bad with her. And so I said, just say they're required. And I sure hope you can still come and serve Jesus in this way and serve our children in this way. And then don't say anything else, because is it really worth it going through the arguments, right? So I didn't feel it was. So, okay. So we're going to move on to, I think I covered everything with that. John has asked what I would have done different and what we think we did right. Okay, so what I think we would have done differently, I should have sent also I was thinking maybe would have been helpful to send a family attendance survey, because I didn't do that. I didn't send, is your family coming back, is your kids? So I didn't really know of a number. I was more concerned if I could first cover the place, right? Okay, that's right. We can't have ministry without our volunteers, okay? And so I think I would have done that. And then I also, in that survey I passed out for the volunteers, I think I would have put a comment section, because a lot of my volunteers felt the need to call me, which was time well spent, okay? But call me and just say, do you know that I have asthma, or do you know I have, and I feel so bad and I just can't serve right now, but can I stay active? Can I come back, and maybe can I refigure in 3 months? They're so precious. They felt so bad. And so I think in that comment section would have been a little bit better of this, something. And so even for the families, because if there's one child in the family immunosuppressed, that affects the family. And so it's even just putting a comment section there, just so you can have that one more touch with them. And then also, it's not natural for kids to social distance. Shocking, right? Okay, so the preschool classes, I have amazing staff that I work with. So our preschool classes are, I will say, I can't stand by these even better. I'm looking at this carpet, would work even on this. We have all kinds of industrial strength carpet, but it works. But these are called clover dot circles. Winners, okay? And they're all different colors, so you can play games on them. All this stuff. Everyone run, get on, yellow, whatever. So not right now, but when things loosen up, we can do the things like that. But so anyways, we got all these colors. We put them on the floor, and the kids stand on them during circle time, sit on them during stand, worship, and we put them, once again, figuring out my classroom so that they can be 6 feet apart. In our large group room, it's never been so well behaved. It's like so awesome, you guys. And so really fun and really precious conversations with these kids, and they're not touching each other. They're apart from each other well enough. They're not breathing on each other. So this is a really big thing. The mistake I made was thinking elementary doesn't need it. Elementary, we can, a couple of the teachers saying, I have an idea. Well, we have these cute rugs. We'll sit on the perimeter of the rug. Oh no, the spatial differential, they don't get that. So elementary, so the first week I'm going around taking pictures of how I can do something better the next week. Yeah, we put these down in all the elementary rooms. The teachers told me they walked in the room and they saw them and sat down. They didn't have to tell them that's what they were for. They thought it was the coolest thing. And so that has been a really big win. So yeah, and you want to touch these. They'll Velcro. Oh, I love it. You can vacuum over them. They stay on the floor. If some kid's messing with them, and it sounds really loud coming up, so they don't get away with it. So we just tell them, hey, we're going to know who's like ripping this off the floor. So anyways, so that's been a big win. So make sure the plan is in place. I would say to make sure there's a plan in place for social distancing all ages, even our 5th graders, because what they were doing in circle time is they were inching closer and closer together. Okay. So, so what we felt that we did right, I would say during the whole process, when our church was shut down, and that was such a shock, right? And I think the whole thing was to stay close to God, to stay at the feet of Jesus. And on our staff, we were intentional. We actually shared devotions every day, okay? Like our staff, our pastoral staff, not our part-time staff, but our pastoral staff. This is what we read. This is what we got out of it. This is what we're hearing around us. And so I felt that was very helpful. I could see what Pastor Dave was hearing. I could see Pastor Brian maybe was hearing or seeing. They could know what was going on from some families. They could know when I was running to the hospital, whatever it was. And so that being intentional about staying at the feet of Jesus, and that's always right. That's always the right thing to do. Okay, so my team read almost every article about COVID-19 updates, including Governor Polis updates. We'd be texting each other. We were crazy. Okay, so and so I feel like that was very helpful though, because you can learn stuff from anything you read, or well, not everything you read, but from the government things. And so the volunteer survey was a right thing. And then the constant communication in different ways, email, we did texting, we broke up our groups and called people. I know every church has a plan for that, but our children's team really helped with that, because if they weren't in a small group, they were this was their small group, was where they served on Sunday. So we made sure to check on them. And so, and the YouTube channel video thing that we could put up seemed to be very helpful. It was more of a personal thing. Like they would be watching it and texting me at the same time. That was funny when you did that in that training. I mean, I was holding up signs. I was, here we go with this, and this is what this is a dot. This is, the whole thing. And it wasn't this long email of what they're reading every day. And so it was just, it also was being respectful, not making fun of what was going on. It was just, hey, you know, this is a thing. And so the thing that me personally as a children's pastor felt that I challenge myself to do every day is I wake up and we used to have a plan, okay? Well, sort of a plan, right? It changes all the time. And right now, my whole goal is to whoever God brings to us is who we minister to. So we're not ministering to 275. I'm not worrying about the numbers right now, Melissa, right? I'm not. I'm sorry if my line's going down on the graph that we get from our executive pastor and whatever. But right now, it's whoever comes in is who we minister to. So if I get a text, it's important. It's a stop for me. And if it's whatever it is, and so that's, people are hurting right now. People are confused. People are angry. Okay, and the Bible has a lot to say about all those things. And the main thing we can do is stay at the feet of Jesus in a humble situation. You know, and one passage, anybody use True here in there? Okay, so we got some True families. One thing we do with True at the end is we read a blessing over the children. And so I just want to do that to you today. And this Psalm 91 has been so powerful to me. If I can make it without tears. So powerful to me. I read it every day those first 2 months. When we lost that baby, I read this. Okay, and so they were calling me from the hospital at 2 a.m. All right, and then we couldn't leave your home at the time. And so there's, I think for us in ministry, Dr. Debbie is exactly right. We have to take care of ourselves, take care of our souls. So when somebody comes in and is so angry about something, we have a godly response, not a Julie response. I want to stop and think that I need to live this out as a pastor, especially right now. So I just want you all to close your eyes and just really take these words in. Psalm 91. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and a rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you make the Most High your dwelling, even the Lord, who is my refuge, then no harm will befall you. No disaster will come near your tent. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways, then will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread upon the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because He loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for He acknowledges my name. He will call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Amen. Okay, so that's it, John. Okay, so do you want to do a question and answer? Okay. We have an insurance person here, so everyone would be really nice to me. I'm a little nervous about that. Okay, so question and answer. You kind of know the size of our church if you have questions.
I've also listed the questions on the board behind you, Julie, that came through Slido.
Okay.
That's what people send in.
Okay, I'm going to address one of them because this has been so true. I don't feel like I want to say much about the mask. Is that okay? The mask issue? But the concern about safety of elderly volunteers eager to return. And so That is so sad, isn't it? When there's the widows. My husband and I adopted a widow during quarantine, and this was not the happy widow. Okay, this is somebody that was really nobody else wanted, and so it's been the best experience. But I think for that, I have called a few of them, asked them to pray, give them specifics about praying. Some of them actually been able to drop off things for them to do little tasks. You know how we have a million tasks in children's ministry? They've been able to cut out things and then put it outside and wait. And I don't even see, like, we put it outside their deck or whatever it is. And so I think this is a piece in our community, whether there are volunteers or not, that we really need to take seriously. And just make that, if you're thinking about somebody, make that text, make that call, split it up between your staff, your children's staff or something for that. So anybody else have any ideas that's worked at your churches with that? Okay.
What was the exact question again?
Well, I guess it was concerned about safety of elderly volunteers eager to return. So some of them that, okay, I'm taking from another side too. You get the ones that can't return, you get them involved. The ones that are eager to return, we have found many of ours very eager to return, okay? But they have not, they've worn their masks, they've come. I am very concerned about their safety. When we did registration and when I've talked to my volunteers, I have had them understand that when they walk into the building, they assume the risk. And I wanna make sure that the risk is that I'm not so worried about them understanding. They understand that. Oh, it's fine. I need to get out of my house. I need it. But it's more of the community that they want. They want to be in a community. And so I am very concerned for them. I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer that other than, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like some of the widows that I've spoken to elderly that just feel so, it's what you're saying, the depressed, the anxious, kind of lost without having a purpose.
Right.
And I've talked to all age people that
Yeah.
kind of feel that too, like,
Right.
you know, and it's really hard. Like, we've tried to come up with some other options, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to do some prep for camp in a bag? Do you want to do,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
I mean, I just thinking right now, like maybe if we started to give them children or families to be praying for,
Yeah.
that could be something that
Right.
could be remote, but it's really hard.
Mhm. And so there's about 4 of them that we did that with. And a lot of our church family knew about the baby that was born with this issue. And so I tell you, that was probably one of the saddest days of my ministry ever. You know, when you can't do anything and they're calling you and, you know, and so, but a lot of those women on our resource team, they were all praying that week. So we gave them a little update, and that's a validation of this is so important because everybody's hurting right now. This is what we can do. Some of them did make food, and that was before we heard that might be such a dangerous thing. You know, I mean, so, or they gave me gift cards for the family, and I was able to take them over as a kind of the safe one to go over to the family because they couldn't have many people over there. So it's just, yeah, that is a good question. Are these, okay. Any other questions pertaining to?
How many sick kids or volunteers have you had since you opened?
Okay, so we opened June 7th, and we have not had one report of a sick child or volunteer. So, hallelujah. And that is something that I have to give to the Lord because I do worry about that. So I think we all do. Go ahead.
I'm curious if you make plans though, or if that happens.
Yes.
Even in the midst of,
Yes.
let's say a kid all of a sudden is on, that's one of the things I'll talk to my staff about.
Correct. So we have an isolation room that the child will be taken to, and it would only be me in there with them, with, of course, my mask. Very limited, I mean, immediately taken out to the isolation room, dropped off with me, a text to me, that type of thing. Right now, we have so few kids that Melissa and I are all over the place. So an isolation room is a really important thing. And then the steps of, so on our registration form, is anybody from New Life here? Because I looked at their waiver that they did when they did registration. That's very helpful. I copied a little bit, kind of copied some of their ideas. And one of them was, you will let us know within 2 weeks, or you will let us know if you are sick and that type of thing. And so that was put in. Now we no longer do registration, but because, you know, everyone's check-in, we know who the teacher was, we know what children were in the classroom, easy for contact tracing, because that's what the government's going to want to know, is the content, you know, the health department will want to know when they get a positive test. Okay, so just,
You said you're taking temperatures.
no, we have not.
Okay.
Yeah, we debated over that, and we did decide not to do that. That's part of the questions, though, and you can see on the wellness questions. So the isolation room is a big thing, and then if somebody does test positive, our church has, Pastor Don was just working on, this is the steps we'll take as a church to contact trace within ourselves, but also to report it. Does that answer the question okay?
So I
Okay.
met with her XP last week, and we
Yeah.
talked about a document, a one-page document you need to have created before anything happens that explains what you're gonna do if somebody calls and says, hey, I got sick. What is gonna be your response to that? And the two key things I've collected from most everybody I've talked to, number one is communication. And think of it as a pebble dropping in a pond and concentric circles that come out. Who's the first group of people that find out? So if the receptionist receives the call, she transfers that where? And then in terms of the next group out until you get to the far outside, which would be the normal weekend attenders, the other piece of information is who shares information. So we need talking points to make sure that you're not saying something that can't be said according to insurance reasons for HIPAA violations. So there are talking points built into the document that John and I were working on last week, so that he could just send that document to the whole staff, explain to them how to handle it, to talk about the concentric circles. And then the other part of the document has to be care above and beyond what is even considered reasonable. So you get a call from a volunteer, I'm sick, you're flooding that place with food, with contact, you're helping them, even as far as benevolence, if they can't pay for their emergency care, you pay for them to go to emergency care. But you're taking this whole thing up to such a level, and what you're trying to do, and I'm gonna be business again, you're forming a defensive barrier. And what you're trying to say is, I cared for this person as best as I possibly could when you're standing in front of the judge. Because the judge will say, what did you do? And here's my document. Here's a log of all our interactions with the person. You're tracking all this stuff. And it feels really badly because you're trying to minister and pastor somebody, and you're doing all this additional business-related stuff, but you have to protect the church. So the document is meant to be one page, one side only, with these bits of information, and shared with the whole staff so you all know what you're supposed to do when you receive the phone call. Because the worst thing you can do is call up your small group, tell them, and then it explodes. It's got to be handled very carefully.
Do you want that document?
I don't have it.
You can ask John. Yeah. Go ahead.
So just following up on that, then, I'm just curious, is there are contingency groups of people that are very strong about their rights. And so I don't want my information out. I don't want, trying to go into the health department, whatever, and you deal with that or?
Yeah, so I will, only because my sister just is feeling better now from having the coronavirus. So when you get a positive test, I believe, okay, that it goes to the health department. And then they try it with her. Now she's in California. So what they did with her is they did contact tracing. This is where you were. This is where who you were around. This is where you cannot be. She even has to take even more time off work because she's a hospice nurse, obviously. So, but that the part I do know, one of the churches that this happened to, that is a friend of mine, he went on and did a video. And that it just came off so well. It was done so well. But that was part of this is our action plan. And it would be heard from him. This is our pastor who we dearly love. He's said it. He wasn't freaked out, and he said what measures they were taking. And so once again, the video, announcement, it comes off so much better than sometimes an email, especially with something like this. So that's awesome. I know John and I had just talked about that because, so we've been open since June 7th. We're running around 500 on our campus, but with that few kids, 65, 70 kids type thing. And so that we haven't had somebody come back and say that they've been sick yet. I know a lot of your churches are open already. This church here from Parker, you guys were telling me, what's your name again? Ever was saying she's doing children's ministry in a tent. That's so awesome.
It's open.
Yeah.
Just covered
Right, and open. And so, and that comes to remind me, one of the things too, is one of the studies we were reading, so we all have air conditioning, right? But if you have windows, we also been opening our windows and holding some doors open with buckets of stones, okay? Causing some issues with the air conditioning system, but once, the elders understood our reason for that, there really is ways you can get the moving air in there. But I love that tent idea too. That's another great idea. So, is there any other questions?
Miss Julie, just to be sure and clear,
Okay.
under a tent versus in a tent.
Exactly.
In a tent
Right.
indicates walls.
Exactly. So it's without walls. Yeah.
Without walls.
That's awesome. So it's julie@academychristian.org. And so we actually have business cards that can, yes?
Did you find that there are certain kinds of toys that were much easier to clean? We've gone through our toys, we're like,
Yeah.
get rid of this.
Look at this. This is a guy asking. This is a great question. I love this idea. I love these kind of questions. Okay, so yes, we did. I would say the toys that you are not feeling safe immersing in water, that have batteries, that have things that you just don't want. Like you guys have that magnetiles. Just put those away. Those things go in the mouth. So many germs on there. And you're going to ruin them washing them so much. So I would say toys like baby dolls, only if they're hard skin, okay, and no hair. If they're hard skin, you can dip them in and you feel safe doing that. Those kind of toys are better. We put away in bins after 70 people came and cleaned with the bleach solution that child development centers use. We did all this stuff, all those kind of toys with batteries, with the, different, hair that you don't know what's in it, that type of thing. And actually we threw those out, but it's just, we really went through an overhaul of our toys, and that is in a separate room. So we needed actually one of our classrooms to put a lot of stuff in. Go ahead.
So one of the things that we have a couple of ER docs and general practitioners that came up with a plan for us where you dilute rubbing alcohol, slightly with water.
Okay.
It has to be 70 or above.
Okay.
And you can spray it on all of those same things.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right. So that's awesome. So that's another, I call them concoctions, like legal concoctions of cleaning things. My background is child development centers, so like licensing, opening, operating them and stuff. And so that's why so there's something called washing and there's something called sanitizing. So washing is immersing in Dawn and warm water, hot water, okay? Then you put them out lay them out on the towels, and then you use your spray. That would be you said 70% alcohol. Ours is the 5 drops of bleach. So if you can teach your leaders, and I did actual training just on this when we cleaned down everything and put things away, because I had 17 that actually weren't afraid to touch all the toys and stuff. And it said that, you guys, this is the washing part. We laid out all these towels, then we're dumping all the toys on it, all the cars and stuff like that. Then you spray it with the bleach. Then you shake it and you spray it again. And so that is and that's still what the child development centers are using all the way through COVID too. So it would be great. It was great fun that night. It was over 3 days. It was over 3 days because of having the volunteers come in to help with that. We have 4. We did have pre-COVID. We had 4 services on a Sunday. 8, 9:30, 11, and 5. Now we just have 8, 9:30, and 11, and children's only at 9:30 and 11.
So you have separate toys for each service?
We do. So we have a dirty bin. The toys from 9:30 go in there. The toys come out of the kiddo's mouth and goes right in there. We don't share toys even during 9:30. You have to be so watchful, right? It's a training thing. That's why if you make it cute on a video and you got these toys and you're showing we got a dirty bin, we have a soap pumper. You know what I mean? Like people are going to watch it, because they commented. It was hilarious. So in every classroom, we have a dirty bin. Okay, for elementary, such a great question. For elementary, every kid has their own little thing of coloring supplies. Which coloring, pencil, all this kind of thing, okay? That goes in the 9:30 dirty bin. 11 o'clock has the supplies that come out, because remember, there's only 8 to 10 kids in a class, and they use those. Then they sit for 7 days, so we don't spray down those, okay? Because studies have shown that it'll be dead by 7 days for that. So we just do our normal cleaning with that. But with the toys, this is 11 o'clock dirty bin. And then we wait until Monday to clean those. I just feel it's safer. I don't know. I don't want my people touching the wet stuff, you know, for germs.
And I just wanted to add,
Yeah.
the spray that we use between service is just peroxide spray.
Yeah.
And we put peroxide in the spray bottle, and that's what we use. Because
Right.
even like dentists use this to clean the kids' mouths when they go in now.
Right.
So that's like safe for the kids versus the bleach solution
Yeah.
between services.
Thank you, Melissa. And although my husband does go around with bleach wipes and stuff for doorknobs, for we clean off the bathroom stuff. He does that between services, but I couldn't remember the name. Thank you, Melissa. And that's what we felt like, it's not going to leave that bleach in the air that I am actually struggle with so much. So I can't imagine kids. So and then Mondays we clean down so that we can leave the bleach in the air. Go ahead.
How many, you said you're running about 500 now on weekends coming in, and how many were you having before?
1,200.
1,200.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, you know, like once back to again, whoever you bring me, Lord, we're going to minister to. And I have baptisms lined up, okay, from the last couple weeks. So we've baptized 2 kids already, and there's more. And so take advantage of, I mean, it's heartbreaking when we think of it. I try not to think of it. I'm not going to go there. That, wow, you know, how many volunteers we've all built up, right, in our ministries. And look what happened. You know, it's like, I'm not going to go there. But the whole thing is, whoever God brings to us, and we're having these great conversations we couldn't have with 24 in a classroom, with 89 in kids, you know, the large group, you know, and they're just so precious looking at you when you're, you know, and they're able to raise their hand, ask a question during the large group story, which you usually don't get so much of that when there's 80 in each room, you know, so elementary I'm talking about. So anyways, okay. Yeah.
Any more questions or, go ahead.
Do you keep all of your kids in the same classroom?
No.
Or do you, for instance, do you rotate? Sometimes we'll have our preschoolers in the classroom for teaching time, then they'll go to the gym for playtime.
Okay.
Or like a one, you're in one room, handle time, and then you go to game time, and then you go to larger time. How are you handling that?
Okay.
Classrooms, or you pretty much keep the kids all?
The kids are, for preschool and under, they're in their same classroom, except that they do go outside to play on the playground. Okay. In elementary, they start in a room, and then they go into a large group room, and they go back into the same room. And then at 11 o'clock, the different, where it's Sunday school, we call it, is just the classroom style. They stay in their same classroom. And so that way, the mom, you know, we can, the beauty of that right now until we're rebuilding and growing is that, okay, so my child was around 7 people today. And it really, we keep the doors open. Check-in is pure air going through the way that we have it set up. And we don't touch. There's signs and there's dots and there's, oh my goodness, you guys. So, you know, but once, I will say, once you get this going, once you have that plan and you stick to it and you be confident in it, that's where God's led you, then that hard part's done. Then you get to see the kids. That's the fun part, you know. We haven't yet. We haven't between services, and because 9:30 doesn't use it. And so we figured only 11 o'clock uses the playground because we don't have time. And then 7 days later, that is one thing that they did change. Remember, they said things stayed on surfaces so long, and now they're changing that, you know. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, has there been any impact on the children? See, I mean, a lot of times our facial cues.
Yes.
See that volunteer that they normally know.
Yes.
Do they recognize?
That is such a great question, because I will tell you, your little ones aren't going to recognize you. Some of them won't. So they were coming in, usually you get body slammed on the leg, right? Or I'm always standing in check-in, you know, and so finally this one little boy, he's like this, looking at me and then looking at my husband. We both got our, you know, and this is people, they see us every time. So I just pulled it down. They're like, you know? But the other thing is, the facial thing is so important when you're teaching. So when our kids were wearing masks, one little boy was trying to share and like tears were coming down. It was going in his mask. I mean, and this is a 5th grade boy. So like he had a really rough time with the homeschool thing, you know, or whatever the school thing it's called now, you know. And so it was so nice when we did drop the thing for the kids because we could see them respond better. We could watch their faces. When I'm up on the stage, I do take my mask off. Okay, our pastor does, that type of thing. But I whip it back on, you know, right, even if I'm going down when the Bible storyteller's up there, whatever is going on. So, yeah. So.
Oh, my question was the same as hers.
Okay. Well, thank you,
Any other
everyone.
questions? You give Julie a hand?
Yeah.